Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome you to Let's Zos Books. It's a new channel that I'm going to do because the realization I had that watching a lot of rare book channels and everything, that my collection is actually quite unique. Not rare in the expensive category, but rare in the obscure. And these books are, my collection have heavily influenced me in my work, in my life, and are some of the most important artifacts that I have. So I wanted to share them with you and introduce you maybe to some things you've never heard of before. My name is Panavus, and yeah, I'm going to show you through what I got. So we'll start first off. I got a first edition of Alan Watts' In My Own Way. Anyway, this book was very influential. Alan Watts played a big role in my own development. For those who don't know Alan Watts, he called himself a philosophical entertainer. But he actually played a big influence on the Beat Generation, specifically Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and helped to bring Zen to the West. What's particularly interesting about this book is the inscription, which this was gifted to Kelsey Grammer in January 1994, which it would have been essentially during the production probably of the second season of Frasier. Which I always found it kind of interesting that Kelsey Grammer got rid of his Alan Watts. It didn't belong on his shelf. But anyway, I think that's an interesting beginning to the collection. Also like a beginning to a very interesting path. Right here I have my copy of Paradoxes of the Highest Science by Eliphas Levi. Very influential on me as well. Introduces Paracelsus' idea of the archidox, which is a method of absolving paradoxes. I have my original college copy of Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained by John Milton, very influential on me. I've got my copy of Federico Fellini's 8 1/2. I was a filmmaker earlier in my life, and still to this day remains one of my favorites. I have my copy of Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters, also an important meditation on the limits of art. Let's see what else I got. I got my copy of the Corpus Hermeticum, the introduction to the Divine Pymander, introduction to the works of Hermes Trismegistus, the Book of Pleasure, Self-Love, and the Psychology of Ecstasy by Austin Osman Spare. This book specifically is incredibly good for really just developing more love and acceptance for yourself and who you actually are, and can help lead to living a more fulfilling life. Highly recommend it. Austin Osman Spare was an incredible artist. Lived in the, I don't know the exact year he was born, I think around 1885 or so. Anyway, lived through World War I, World War II, was one of the forefathers of essentially the Zos Occultus, which is a very interesting avenue of inquiry, should anyone be interested in. Anyway, I'm going to show you, I have a lot more of his works and some more obscure works just over here. Alright, so I've always kind of been a collector. Originally I was a filmmaker in Los Angeles. I once had a collection of about probably close to like 3,000 films. But what happened was I got introduced to Alejandro Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain, which changed everything for me. And I went completely down the Jodorowsky rabbit trail, especially when Jodorowsky's Dune came out. Completely changed the way I saw filmmaking to begin with, and I ended up kind of redirecting my entire collection and what I was interested in from that point forward. Jodorowsky's book Psychomagic is a really interesting and powerful book on how to use your subconscious to transform your life. Really works. But on top of it, you know, my Jodorowsky collection really took off. I mean, I went deep into everything that he did. We have Meta Barons with Jodorowsky and Jimenez. Just an absolute classic. You know, it's like not just, you know, the Ink Call, for example, was the graphic novel which a lot of Blade Runner was based off of. This is just kind of the tip of the iceberg with Jodorowsky and Moebius. I have the whole Jodorowsky humanoids collection, actually. The White Llama, Final Ink Call, Before the Ink Call. You see Royal Blood, Megalex, Weapons of the Meta Barons. You know, all of them. Really, I actually got his whole collection. So it started me really thinking, you know, especially considering Holy Mountain was based off of this book, Mount Analog by René de Mal. René de Mal was a French writer. He was a Gurdjieffian. Very interesting books. Night of Serious Drinking is another one of his pretty incredible transmissions. An allegory for life in the context of a night out with his friends, which, you know, opened up all kinds of avenues, especially a doorway into like occult books, you know. So, you know, the collection continued from there. The Black Book of the Yazidis, very fascinating. Line of Inquiry, Mysteries of Kabbalah by Eliphas Levi. Of course, you know, Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual, History of Magic by Eliphas Levi, you know, and led me to some of my more interesting pieces. Specifically, this one. This is a very rare book, The Magical and Philosophical Commentaries on the Book of the Law. This book was incredibly important for me when I wrote my book, Excalibur. You know, it starts with the seal of the OTO. Let's see. See if we can just browse it real quick. You know, a picture of the famous Stele of Revealing, Stele 666 from the Cairo Museum. Crowley's original transcript. You know, this is really a must if you want to understand who Aleister Crowley actually was and what he actually taught and what he was actually about. You really can't go without magical and philosophical commentaries. And last I checked, I mean, I got the last available copy that I could find. Very hard to find this. So, you know, this is one of my favorite things that I own. Additionally, you know, I have a copy of Two Grimoires by Austin Osman Spare. Very powerful subconscious transformation. I have Spare's Earth Inferno and Book of Satyrs. This, you know, I think Earth Inferno he did when he was like maybe 18. He was an incredible artist, just fascinating. Let's see. One of my favorites, you know, some examples. Some of his artwork. This is one of my favorites, Existence. Anyway, Spare is one of my absolute favorites. The Focus of Life and the Formula of Thanatos. Mind-blowing book for me. Really transformed the way I saw things. I also, I have a copy of the Unspeakable Confessions of Salvador Dali, which for me, it was interesting because I've often found myself as an artist, and with Dali specifically, it's interesting to see the overlappings between Dali's own personal philosophy and how he viewed things and approached everything, compared to how, I don't even know how most people view him, to be honest. But very, transformative influences for me, absolutely, every one of these pieces. I got Hunter S. Thompson, first edition, Generation of Swine, Tales of Shame and Degradation in the 80s, still very topical. So, also, I got this. This is Dali's 50 Secrets of Magic Craftsmanship, which was a gift to me from an art dealer. There are not a whole lot of these. I don't know how many of them there are, to be honest with you. I had never even heard of it before it was gifted to me. But to be honest, to me it's been a quite extraordinary piece. One thing, I don't really care about the whole mint condition thing. For me, what's special for my books are that they come into my life and how I use them. So even my most rare books, I will make notes in, I'll annotate, I read my books, I don't just have them for show, and I think that's important. For example, the Index of Secrets, secret of the 5 different movements of the 5 types of brushes, the secret of the springboard to use for blending, the secret of slumber with a key, the secret of why Gala loves painting and why painting loves Gala. It's just absolute Dali in every way. So this is like a real treasure. Of course, I got Alex Gray's, Vision Box, and I have both of H.R. Giger's Necronomicons, which I find to be fantastic. This is my book, and this is the one that I've studied, and this is the one that I find fascinating. Giger's artwork, most of you have probably never heard of him, except a lot of you have seen Alien, and the Alien was one of Giger's designs. Here's an example of Giger's Baphomet. A lot of people find Giger's work to be quite terrifying. I think I've always found it sort of expanding. It puts you in an incredibly uncomfortable position of taking in imagery that you probably wouldn't normally take in, but elicits different states of consciousness, different states of inquiry. Let's see if I can find one of my favorites. I was very impressed with his biomechanoid pieces, and this one specifically I think is quite extraordinary. I mean, the level of detail Giger achieves. He painted with airbrush, he approached everything through magic and his own magical system. This is probably one of my favorite pieces. This is this one right here on the top. These two They're both collaborations. Let's see, it has a, here is Giger himself in his dungeon. This is, you can actually go see this. This is in Switzerland. But you probably don't know it. Giger is an Academy Award winner and had a huge influence on the film industry and the direction that modern film went in. So I find that pretty fascinating. So we'll just continue on our tour. Something kind of interesting for me, I don't know if it is for you, but is the films that did survive into my collection. I ended up getting rid of most of them. However, there were several directors that did not do so and kept my collection. One of those is Stanley Kubrick. Obviously, I didn't feel like parting with Stanley Kubrick. I have Stanley Kubrick's filmography still. I just feel like it was too important for me to part with. This book right here, Andrei Tarkovsky's Sculpting in Time. This is the best book on filmmaking ever written. I mean, this movie explains the mechanism of film, how it works, why it means what it does, psychological effects, how to, you know, capture something real and potent and magical. And honestly, after reading Tarkovsky and doing a deep dive into Jodorowsky, that's when I made the final films that I made in my career, and felt like I actually came to closure with it and led to the rest of my life's work, which, you know, I think is quite significant. Stalker, amazing. Probably one of the best movies ever made. The more I think about it, the more time that I'm given to think about it, I do think Stalker probably is the best film I've ever seen. Andrei Rublev, incredible. The differentiation in art of creating an icon and what it takes to create iconography. Mirror, Nostalgia, Solaris, Sacrifice, all of his films are seriously pure magic. I also have some pretty interesting pieces that I kept. I have a out-of-print copy for Jean-Luc Godard's A Woman is a Woman. One of my favorite French New Wave film. I have a couple ones. I have Fellini's entire collection, and filling out the entire collection, it actually took me some time of search to come across an actual copy of City of Women and Casanova. These took me almost like 6 years to find, you know, which to acquire them was the only way I could even see them at that time. So these are still pretty important pieces to me. I have Werner Herzog's entire collection. I thought this was a wonderful collection piece. With it, you know, I have his Conquest of the Useless and Walking in Ice. This tells about how he just decided one day to walk to Paris from Munich. And this is the story of Fitzcarraldo, which is interesting because when I was in Puerto Maldonado, I actually happened upon the actual remains of the ship and have a picture right here on the wall. So I have my Werner Herzog, I kept Tarkovsky, Kurosawa, Kobayashi, a couple of Scorsese films, Last Temptation of Christ, I kept and couldn't do them. Actually, were the only ones that I retained my copy. I actually have my original grip book still, just because it's useful. And then on top of it, first edition, 1984. First edition, and On the Road, the book that started the beat movement, essentially. Original Kerouac. I got my first DVD collection of Indiana Jones, which, you know, as a kid, this was my go-to favorite films. Now, the interesting thing, the final piece I'm going to show you down here that I find fascinating is this Sidney Sime collection. Now, this one I got because specifically it was a library card, or it was a library book, which actually was marked for discard. So the library discarded Sidney Sime, which is interesting because with Sime, you have the illustrator from Lord Dunsany's Gods of Ghana, which inspired Tolkien and Lovecraft, and essentially, you know, set the tone and the aesthetic of 20th century fantasy art and literature. And Sidney Sime was discarded and thrown out, which, you know, this is one of those rare pieces that I feel pretty significant, and, you know, happy to have in my collection. So, anyway, thank you for being here on this tour. I hope you enjoy some of these pieces. If there's any individual piece that you'd like to see more of and hear about specifically, I think I might do actual specials to just go into the ideas and the texts of different you know, works from my collection. So if you have any questions, drop it in the comments. Thanks for joining.